Hi, thanks for joining me for a broom making little tutorial. If you came to a workshop for one of these, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the experience of learning how to make these. This is just an adaptation of traditional broom making. Normally you'd be using corn silks, that's probably the best plant material to be using, or millet as well can be used. I have an abundance of pine needles which I use for basketry, so this was just something, a little hobby that I picked up on the side just to clear surfaces, which has been just a really fun activity to do. So I'll show you how the method I use. This is probably the largest or longest pine needles you'll find here in Australia. These are a ponderosa pine. Majority of the ones that you find are a lot smaller. They're about 10 centimeters long. They have a richer colour, so if you're after a small broom, they are ideal. But the longest you'll find is probably 25. If you find 30 centimetre pine needles, you've hit the jackpot here. So here are just a few examples that I take to workshops for this brush technique. What I like to work through first is just a small sample with short pine needles. It gives us a chance to work through the binding, how tight to hold it, and tight enough that we're not going to split pine needles. Just get used to the whole movement between your feet and hands, but which we'll get to in a minute. So we'll work through a short little scour brush first. We'll move on to the turkey wing style. So this one I made during a workshop. Now this one had the caps trimmed off. You'll notice that they all look a little different. Some have the caps on, some have them off. All the binding wraps, though, you can see are looking similar. They're all done with a hemp twine or cord, hemp cord. This one's with a 0.5 mil cord. This one's with a 1 mil cord. So I'll show you the small ones. You can see there's quite a difference in the size of the binding cords. Now it doesn't matter what you choose to use, you will get a faster result by using a 1 mil. But I would not go thicker than that. It'll get quite chunky in the pine needles. I think, particularly if you go with a turkey wing style, it is nicer with a finer cord. So the other options I've got here are working cord. It's pre-waxed, so you could also use something like this, really strong. Whatever you choose to use, you shouldn't be able to break it in your hands. It needs to be strong and durable and be able to be held under tension. So that's the cord, and the other thing is just a stick. I mean, you can see this is about 30 centimeters, a little over 30 centimeters long. Just a stick of any type that can be held under tension. We're going to use this as almost like a treadle on your feet. So let's get moving on to the actual technique now. So the first thing to think about is the pine needles themselves. What length brush you've got, what pine needles you can actually find. Here in Australia, we really only have small pine needles. The longest you're going to get are 25 centimetre long. It's probably the longest I've had. If you can find 30, you've hit the jackpot here. But quite commonly, you're going to find ones that are either this size or a little bit smaller. We do, though, want all the pine needles to be completely dehydrated. They need to be dry. Now, these are green. They just haven't sat in the sun to change into that nice warm honey colour. So once they're dry, we're not going to rehydrate them to work. We're going to work with these completely dry. And these browner ones here, you can see they're all a little different length. I'm going to work a broom. I want them all roughly the same length. Because once I start trimming, I don't want to be trimming all of these long ones down to the length of that. So I'm going to remove these shorter ones here and keep these longer ones. Now I'm just doing like a scour brush to start with. I'm only going to use a small bundle in my hands. So I'll put those pine needles to the side and then focus on the cord that I'm going to use. I'm going to grab my post. And I'm going to grab my cord. Now working on this, you can, what we're aiming to do is put the cord onto the rod will sit on the floor, and our feet will sit on top of it to apply tension. Now you can put the spool straight on here and pop that on the floor, and both feet sit on top of this and hold it down while you pull on this cord. Now you can do that if you know your surface on the floor is clean, and the cord is yours at home to use. For a workshop, we're not going to use, we're going to grab our cord and 2 full arm spans apart. We're going to grab 4 arm spans. So I've just got 4 full arm spans. I'm now just going to do a single knot, 1 single knot over the rod, just like so. Hold that tail down. I'm just going to wrap this around the rod now. Does not need to be neat. Okay, I'm going to pop that onto the floor. Now, this is not crucial to remember. You see how the thread is on the outside of the rod here? I'm going to place that down with the string facing away. So when I go to pull on this, it's going to want to roll towards me rather than having to chase it and rolling it away from me. So I'm going to pop that on the floor. I'm just going to put my feet on top of it just to hold it there like a treadle. So if I pull on this, rod's not going to move. I'm going to loop this over on itself. Oh gosh, I don't know. Is that like 10 centimeters roughly? Just needs to be larger than the binded section that you're going to do along the pine needles. This needs to be longer than that. So what I'm going to do, just grouping my pine needles, making sure they're nice and tidy, just on the end. Now at this point, are you going to cut them? Are you going to keep them? That's entirely up to you. So it doesn't matter how these are arranged if you're going to choose to cut them off. If you want to keep them, as we're binding, we're just going to pay a little more attention just to tap them in, line them up, make sure you've got a nice tidy bundle at the top. Now I like to start at the bottom and work my way up to the top. So that loop that I made, I'm just going to sit that at the top where my caps are. Hold on to it with one hand. Grab this end here. My tail's going to sit at the bottom here. I'm going to wrap just gently over the top. This 1, 2. Now I want to do it at least 2, maybe 3 times. You can see I've just started to tighten that up with my hands. Okay, I'm going to put my thumb there just to secure the wrapping while I move this around. Okay, and then we'll have a good look at it. What we want is this loop to lay open over the top of the bundle. Do one more loop over the top to hold that in place. What's going to happen is we're going to keep wrapping our handle all the way up to the top of the caps, or close to. Then the thread end is going to loop through this hole, and then we'll pull on this, and that's how we'll secure the thread ends. So there'll be no knotting and there'll be no needing to glue any of the binding in place. What I do need to do is just tighten up this rod. It's a little loose. So I've got a short end here just for demonstrating. So when I go to, once I've done a couple of wraps, what I want to do is hold on to this, and I'm going to pull the broom. Just going to tighten the wrapping. And then I'm going to roll it. I'm going to lift my feet up just to pull some cord. Feet back on to secure it. I'll twist my pine needle bundle, So more wrapping is over the top, and then I'm going to give it a pull. If you can see the wrapping slipping in on itself, and I've got a really tight bundle there. And then I'll just keep rolling my bundle. Lift my feet, pull some more cord, place my feet back down again on the rod, tighten my bundle, roll again a few times, lift it to tighten. So when I go to squeeze that bundle now, I can feel, I can't actually squeeze it because it's so tight, that wrapping, which is exactly what we want. We want all of that binding wrapping to be sitting close to each other, but not over the top. I think I'm now going to tighten that up. Right. When you're wrapping, you want to make sure that this can still move. Ooh, see how they can move straight through? The loop can still be adjusted. And it pulls back through. So I'm going to hold my finger there and just hold that in place. And cut a loop off. That thread now I'm going to pull through the loop, just like so. I'm going to grab the end and pull. I'm going to hold that flat. I don't want to hold that tight because it needs to be able to loop down, and we're going to pull this loop so it sits halfway through the binding. You can see, you should be able to see it move through the binding here. Can you see the little lump? It's sitting about there right now. I'll move it down a little bit further. There it is, just there halfway through. If you want to check it, you can come along and pull the other end. And it's moving, so that's good. I know that's secure, and I can't squeeze that. That's really firm. And then from there, trim those threads, just like this. We'll go into the finishing soon at the very end after we've done the turkey wing, and we'll trim that off, and I'll also trim these caps off as well. But this is the start of your first pine needle broom. First things first, when we go into the turkey wing shape, you need to get a bundle of pine needles, as much as you want, as thick as you want that broom to be. If it be, a smaller one like this, you can fit it in your hand, nice and small, great for little tables or work surfaces. Or you can go with a larger one, your big span like this. It's much larger in diameter, so it doesn't matter what size you choose, depending on the purpose that you want it to be. Once you've decided what size, what thickness broom you want to have, what we need to work out is how many segments do you want across that fan. You can have as little or as many as you want. For this video, just to make things simple, I have 8 segments working along here. It should be more like this. I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 on this broom here, and we've got more on this one. So, and we'll start here and work our way up where we finish up at the very top here. So once you've determined how many segments you want, we'll then have a think about how many wraps you want to do per segment as well. Again, as many or as little, but what that will do is determine where exactly on the length of the pine needle you will start. Whether you want to start all the way down here, halfway, or like I've done, just over halfway across here. So that will affect how the fan looks, also how much it will fan out. And another thing to play with. When you start working your fan, you will notice that as you're wrapping, it's back in place. It's just going to pretty square. Not until after you've completely finished your broom do you grab this and start bending it out, and your fan will stick into place, and your wrappings will just have a little bit of movement, a little bit of space between each of them. Again, the next thing to think about is, do you want to retain the caps or do you want to keep them? As we go through each segment, we'll just check in and adjust these caps as we go, like as if we're going to keep it. But if you are going to remove them, you need to stop a fair amount away from the ends of it, where the binding doesn't start to increase in size and fan out towards the top, because once you cut those off, we don't want any pine needles slipping back through and the wrapping falling off the top. So no closer than here. You can see that's all really secure, it's not going to move around. And you can see, I'm going to start off with this bundle. Don't normally work this inside, it's just not a pleasant day to be working outside. Right, you can see I've got all of my sections laid out. Now you can do this as planned or at random as you want. You just pick a little bit up, we'll do some wrapping, we'll get the next bundle, but I like having it planned out so I don't have to think about it while I'm holding on to it. So once again, we need to put our binding onto the rod. I'm going to use a different colour this time. Now with this, we're going to put on 8 arm spans worth of thread. So that's fingertip to fingertip with your arms wide out. I'm going to put 8 onto this rod now and tie it back on. Now before we get started, the other piece of equipment you will need going to cut a tab. It's just a spare little thread you'll need. Don't have to be too long. We fold it in half, going to knot one end. We're just going to put this to the side and we're going to have it ready when we get closer to the end with this loop and the knot, okay? Just pop that. I'll explain that at the end. Okay, I have enough thread on my pole. And put that on the ground again. Thread's on the outside, so it's going to roll towards me when I pull it. Feet down to secure. Put a thread end towards the end of the pine needles. Hold that in place. My thread laying over the top. I'm just going to wrap it around, starting about halfway down. Just making sure my wrapping doesn't overlap. Tightening just a much. This is just tightening with my hands, not my foot. Right. I've got that in place. Just going to give this now a little tug. A little roll. You see my tail is just here on the pine needles. I'm going to roll just a few times. Just another tug. And the same. So I like to have a look at how many wraps I've got. I'm not too worried about whether or not I can see that thread end, because regardless of where it sits with the pine needles, it's always going to be covered up with the thread. Right, I'm going to grab my next bundle. I'm going to add these to my bundle, and then I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to where I've placed them here. Needles, but try not to move them. Once you've got them in place, try not to move them too much. Now that they're here, as we twist, they're going to be wrapped into the cord. So this. I lift my foot up now, pull some cord, feet back down again. A tug just to secure. What I want to make sure is So that sits next to it. It's going to want to curl into the round. So, and I'll pull those pine needles to the side. Just do as many wrappings as you want. Give it a pull at tension, pull. A little bit more. Just want to make sure that they're not overlapping. They're aligned next to each other. Just like that. Lovely. I'm going to add the next bundle in now. I'll just do one roll. Just to hold them in place while I come through and check my caps. So that's what you don't want. See how they're rolling onto the top and I've lost my bundle. So which would tell me that maybe that's too many pine needles to add to that bundle. So I'm going to take some out. I'm going to realign them. Just checking on both sides. They're still all lined up. So I'm on my 8th segment, just done a little bit of wrapping on that. I'm going to get that loop again and I'm going to add it along the length of the bundle. So I've got the knot down here because that's the end I'm going to pull on once that thread goes through the loop to pull it through like we did on the first one. So we're going to make sure that lays flat as we continue to wrap and bind over the top. Make that flat there. We're going to continue right to the end. You can see I've just overlapped here. If you need to undo, come back. Go, that's better. Alright, we're going to keep going. I'm going to go a little bit further up as far as I can come up on here. So at all times you should be able to still slide this in and out. Another thing, as we're coming up closer to the end, this is now going to start to broaden out at the top here. So we've got some options. As you can see, some pine needles are sort of buried in down here, and all of that plant matter adds bulk to the bundle. So you can go around, pull them out, tidy this up. right at the very end now of that binding. Grab your scissors, chop the length of cord off. And thread this point through the end.
This says recommended for ages plus bird. How would you do something that's we said? No? Yeah, why do that?
Make sure that's tight. You can see how it's wrapped itself underneath and through the binding. And I know that if I pull on that, nice and tight at the top, come through, trim, and I'm going to spread this out as I pull my wing out, little bit by little bit. You might feel your binding move a little bit underneath your hands, but you've still got a tight wrap on your pine needles. Okay, now for trimming the fan, you need to just look at where the shortest lengths are, and you need to decide where exactly you want to trim it back to. Now I've got some short lengths that are like down here. I'm not going to trim it down to there. I'm just going to take off all these really runaway ones so the bulk of the fan is trimmed. Just like this. Take a little bit off at the time, reassess, and trim again. You don't want to be trimming also before you've fanned out this section as well. You want to just loosen it up, get your bundles into place if they've overlapped a little bit. There you go, and then trim. I might take this one back just a little bit and get that nice rounded shape on this one. I think I'm happy with that. Really happy with that shape. Yep, looks really good. All right. So for this one, I'm going to trim off the ends on this. Like this. I'm going to take this one back pretty short. Now they are easy to cut, but you won't be able to just do a single thing. So just slowly eat away at it. They're going to fly everywhere. Do not get it in your eye. From a different angle. That's straight, that's nice. Now sometimes I like the cap, sometimes I don't. And you can see how with the wrapping, I haven't gone too high, so if I chop these off completely. Now in the other one I showed you that I just trim the tops off here and just tidy it up, and you can sort of nudge them into place and smooth out that rounded end. I am actually just going to cut them off completely for this one. So very gently, just as you go. Now I want a distance from my wrapping to these ends. You don't want anything slipping around and coming out or coming apart. Now this just will take a little bit of going around depending on the scissors you've got or whether you've used a blade to cut it. But that is also what you can achieve. It also has a really nice look to it. Right. So they are examples of pine needle brushes that you can make.